See, if I think about something outside of my norm, then I'm forced to do something about whatever I discover. Or I'm gonna be living in the hell of knowing out of fear, timidity, or apprehension that I didn't go and explore that thing that has been exposed to me. And Mark Twain, I believe, said it best that a mind stretched beyond its original dimension could never return back to its original shape. So once I've been exposed to something else, I can't unsee what I saw. So what do people do? They stay in their bubble. So they totally miss their purpose. Like to think that God put you here for a specific purpose, gave you gifts to go and pursue that purpose. And that's the thing you'll be most successful at doing because that's what he designed you to do. And you didn't do that. You show up 80 years later having a conversation with God about how you fumbled your life. That's crazy to me, bro. Hey everybody, I'm Brian Adamson, real estate investor. I've been investing for almost 2 decades.
Hey, what's up, man? How's it going?
What's up, bro? How you feeling?
I'm doing pretty good. How's life treating you these days?
Oh, man. All thanks, no complaints, bro.
I love to hear. How's that weather out there in Florida?
Oh, man, it's, one thing about Florida, she consistent. You ain't never got to worry about did she get up and make sure the sun was up and all that good stuff. Yeah, it's hard to beat, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you.
And I love to hear it, man. In your own words, how would you describe to someone what you do in real estate?
Basically, I invest in real estate remotely. Because to your point, I live here in Florida. My primary market has been in Michigan for the most part. I figured out how to build my business without me having to physically be present. So basically, all of the various functions within the business, from contractors to project managers to this and that, I trained them on how to be me in my absence. And then I put systems in place to manage them while in my absence. And yeah, I've been able to successfully do that in both residential and commercial multifamily and help people all around the world, literally Denmark, Japan, Afghanistan, Canada, all throughout the States, kind of adopt my same framework to go out and have success.
What first pulled you into real estate?
Looking for something legit to do at that time. So I was 22 and I had just came out of a season where I was looking at a 4 to 10-year felony when I was 17, hustling in the streets, and caught a case when I was in high school. And so, by God's grace, I got on the other side of that, fully expunged from my record, never went to prison. But then I also had a daughter at 18, and, I flunked out of college, eventually went back to college, and then while I was up in college, I was like, okay, this cool. Like, I understand I'm working toward a career, but in the interim, I got a 2-year-old, right? So I had to figure out something else to do. And working at the Shell gas station at college, like most, didn't work for me. So I had to figure out another way. And thank God, it's funny, I just was texting with this guy yesterday. He's like my de facto first mentor. He gave me an opportunity to just invest in one of his deals, took my refund check, invested in his deal. And I caught the bug. It was like, oh, this is crazy, right? I can make thousands of dollars legitimately and safely.
What do you think he's seen into you that would have him come to a college kid to have you invest in one of his deals?
Because I ain't moved like a college kid, right? Like, he knew my previous context. He knew me from being committed to whatever it was that I was involved in. And so I think because he also had a little bit of a checkered past himself, he could see in me what I was trying to accomplish, and he knew that I needed somebody like him because he needed somebody like him and probably didn't have it at one point in time.
Do you remember what that first deal was that you invested in with him?
That's what's so funny, right? I knew what the investment was and what my return on investment was, but I didn't know really what we invested in. Because I still came from this mentality, that's his business, right? He gave me an opportunity to participate in his business. I'm not asking a bunch of questions. All I know is that I trust him enough to where I'm gonna give him this $6,000, $7,000 and he said a 25% return. And I think it was like 60 days. It took a little bit longer than that, but the money did come back. And that was all I needed to know, bro. I had already taken enough penitentiary chances to where stuff like that just was like a layup for me.
Got it. Do you remember your first, we'll call it, your first deal that was like just your deal, like the deal that you did?
So I bought 3 deals between 2006 and 7, right? I was 22 years old in college. I just don't remember which one I bought first. So for the sake of conversation, I'm going to go with the one I think I bought first, which was this property in Southfield, Michigan. It was a suburb of Detroit, for those that may be familiar or not. And yeah, it was just a ranch style home. I bought it with a mortgage. I bought it from a family member of a friend. And, you know, that kind of got my beak wet to where I was actually able to sign for a mortgage, right? That was crazy to me, you know, that I was able to sign for a mortgage. That's back when they had no doc loans. You know, a lot of this now looking back was the catalyst as to how we ended up in that market contraction, because we were giving loans to 22-year-olds in college with no job. You know what I'm saying? And so I bought 3 rental properties, all with mortgages, stated income loans, which meant that you could state your income with no proof of employment. And then after that, in 2007, we built a new construction home for us to move into when we graduated college. So imagine owning 3 properties in college that you signed to get, and then broke ground on a new construction home in March of the year you graduating, so that you and your family could move into a 2,500 square foot house, 300,000 square feet. I mean, $300,000 fresh out of college. Like, it was insane. But I didn't know 2008 was coming, so it was short-lived, the enjoyment of it. But nonetheless, it happened.
I don't know any kids that say, hey, when I grow up, I want to be a real estate investor. So I'm curious, when you was a kid, what did you want to be?
Believe it or not, man, I wanted to be an architect. Like, when I got,
Okay.
and I think, you know, thank God for teachers, but they just shouldn't have encouraged them rectangle cars we used to draw with the big wheels. You know what I'm saying? And then, you know, you take a plant and you do the vertical line, and then you start putting a little swoop on it. I really thought I could draw.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And for whatever reason, thought I was going to be an architect as a result of it. And, you know, shout out to the teachers for gaslighting me or glazing me, as the kids would say. Nah. But no, that wasn't in the cards, bro. I finally went to high school and got in drafting class. I was like, oh, these lines got to be straight, like all the time. You know what I'm saying? And precise. This don't work for me. But it's funny because it still led me to real estate somehow. But yeah, I thought I was going to be an architect. I mean, initially, every child's dream is to be like their dad, right? So my father was a firefighter for the city of Detroit. And so at one point, you know, I may have said it out my mouth like I want to be. He was like, no, you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, you don't.
So this ain't the life you want?
No, he's like, no, you don't. You know, because he always wanted better for his kids, whatever that meant to him, right? And not to diminish what he was doing, because, I mean, in my neighborhood, you know, him being a firefighter was about equivalent to being the mayor. You know what I'm saying, in terms of notoriety. So, you know, it wasn't like what he did was just like, you know, so minuscule. You know, it was a big deal to have a present father who had a solid career that went to work every day. You know, my dad was the type of guy that when he retired from the fire department 30 years later, they ended up having to give him like 6 figures in time that he never used. So like, I don't know if what they call it, like PTO or something.
Oh, PTO.
Yeah, and maybe it's not quite that, because he took his vacations, but he only missed like 4 days in 30 years, bro. Something crazy. So he had like this big credit with them. So, you know, that was an enigma, you know, growing up where I grew up. Like that, for one, to have a solid job and career, to be in the house as a present father, and to have that type of work ethic was just not common.
What was growing up in your household like?
Interesting. So I was the black sheep of the family, right? And I didn't notice until now, looking back on it. But essentially, I just learned how to live a double life early on. So my father, again, had this idea of what he wanted for his children, which I don't knock him for, right? But in his mind, what was really going on in that era by which I was growing up, which was, you know, I'm an 80s baby. I was growing up in the early 90s. Crack. It was, you know, I was a safety boy in 4th grade and had a 38 snub nose pointed in my face asking me where somebody went. I'm on a safety post. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
somebody
crazy.
chasing somebody through the neighborhood. Grade? Yeah. So like, and these things I would never tell them, because in his mind, just things were different than what they were. The life he wanted for us didn't necessarily exist in the element we were being raised in. So for that reason, then I had to come home. You know, I'm Brian the scholar, right? I was always scholastically gifted. I knew how to play the school game. Always did well in that regard. Got great grades. I got great grades, and then it was like a lot of performance based. You know, like I when I realized that the things in the form of accomplishments were the things that my parents praised me for, then I gave them that, right? But then otherwise I was outside. Like, you know, I just was always drawn to the element for whatever reason. You know, being outside, moving around, being in the streets, chasing girls, chasing money. I was just always moved by that from a very young age, right? And I think the first thing that I did tangibly toward that was when I was 12. I went and got a job at the barbershop, sweeping up here, right? $25 a week. But for me, it gave me like contribution to my own economy, right? Like I wasn't dependent on you giving me this, you giving me that, birthday. No. I want to go produce my own money, which inadvertently I was getting paid way more than $25 a week because I was around a lot of guys from the neighborhood that was getting money, and I was able to soak up game from them. And I learned so much more from being in that environment with grown men who were in the context that I wanted to be in versus just being in the confinement of a home, you know. But it's just crazy when I thought about this the other day. Just for me to even get the job at the barbershop meant that my grade school friend Zachary had to die. He had the job at the barbershop. And I never forget, he was trying to put me on. He took me up there, introduced me to the owner, Will, and he was like, yeah, man, I was trying to see if my Will, like, one of y'all gonna work here. You know what I'm saying? I ain't hiring both of y'all. So I told Zach it was all good, but unfortunately, bro, not long after that, Zach got caught at the Coney Island and with his older cousins. Somebody came and was looking for his older cousin, shot it up, killed Zach. Zach was probably a year younger than me, so he was probably like 11 when he died. And
That's crazy. Do you think that registered to you then? I know I had a friend of mine die around the same time, 11, and I played baseball with. And it was for me personally, it was surreal to where it was like, I don't know how to explain it because it wasn't like on TV where you feel like you just be overly sad and, you know, you sad because they're gone. And then, you know, you go to the funeral and see it feels real, but it also didn't feel real. And it was kind of like things just kept moving. But then when you get older and you look back at it, you be like, dang, I got a son. I look at my son, he's 15. I can imagine him passing away at 11, 10, 9, really any age. But just to think of it that early, do you think that had any type of toll on you at all?
The sad part, bro, I think you articulated it very well. It obviously I felt, right? And I remember the days thereafter coming to school and not seeing, you know, I still could see his face right now. It's clear as day, bro. He had this big gap in his teeth. It was bright light. We used to tease him, call him Bart Simpson. And but just he stayed fresh, just a beautiful spirit. And yeah, it was eerie going to school, you know, for the next few days, few weeks. But at the same time, I think two things. One, the unfortunate truth is you kind of grow numb to that stuff even at a young age growing up in Detroit because it's all over the place all the time, right? I remember going over my friend's house when I was 12 or 13 and turning on Schoolcraft in the gas station right on the corner, saw a guy in an all-white vet get his brains blew out. You know what I mean? Like on my way to go play video games. So you kind, I mean, I hate to say it, but you kind of grow numb to some of it. And then I think also because those types of things are so abnormal, but we normalize it in our context that we so young, we don't have the capacity to really fully understand all that yet as to what that really means. Like you said, looking back on it now, going back 20 plus years, you kind of like, man, what kind of crazy was that? You know what I'm saying? But in the context, when you in it, you know it's wrong, you know it's bad, but you don't know to what full extent though.
To kind of shift gears, I'm assuming you're not the only sibling, because you said you was the black sheep in your family. What's kind of your family makeup?
Yeah, so I got a brother that's 12 years older than me and a sister that's 7 years older. So I'm the baby of the family and the black sheep.
So usually when you're the baby of the family, you're the one that's adored. That's usually like everybody puts all the attention to the baby. So how did you become the black sheep?
That's a really good question, bro. That's a really good question. I think I became I think I became the black sheep just because I was living a double life. You know what I mean? And although they weren't privy to it to some degree, just the sheer fact that that was happening by default made me the black sheep. And I say that when I say that, I mean this. My sister, for the most part, outside of, normal teenage, stuff, went along with what the expectation was. My brother went along with what the expectation was. I was outside. You know what I mean? Like it looked decent enough to pass the eye test and the smell test at home, but it it was a lot going on outside the house. Like a lot going on outside the house.
So if you say you was living sort of like a double life and they didn't necessarily know what was going on outside the house, what makes you think that you was actually the black sheep? Is it more of a you're saying I was different than them, or when people think about black sheep, they think about the one that doesn't fit into the family? Everybody's like, what is going on with this person?
Facts. So number one, I was the only dark skinned one. I couldn't figure that out for most of my life, right? Then, but number two, the fact that I was an independent thinker. So even though they didn't know how wild it was outside the house, they still knew inside the house I was an independent thinker. You know what I mean? I would still conduct myself in a way and voice certain things that were maybe inconsistent in what they thought. I would challenge thoughts. You got to make this make sense to me. You know what I mean? I know you told me this, what to do or what not to do, but make this make sense for me. You know what I mean? And so they would never call me the black sheep, by the way, but I affectionately have named myself that because I'm clear about what the circumstances have been.
So what do you think they think your position is in the family?
They would say that I'm spoiled.
Okay, so they
They, they,
would view you as the spoiled baby of the family.
oh, 100%. That's typical default big brother, big sister, older sibling type of thing, right? We got to find somebody to blame. So he's spoiled. It's like, okay, but I jumped off the porch at 12, mixed it up every which way, caught 2 cases my senior year in high school, kicked out the house at 17, baby at 8. Like, how was I the spoiled one? I don't understand. You know what I'm saying? Me and my old dude was constantly at odds through all my teenage years. So, everybody got their narrative and their opinion, but I was there. You know what I mean? And that's the other part. My brother being 12 years older, my sister being 7 years older, we really didn't grow up together. You know what I mean? We had moments where we shared a room here or there, but for the most part, with that type of age gap, their perspective is lacking because they weren't really there every day.
Yeah. Was your older siblings more like siblings or parents?
My brother tried to play more the parent role than sibling for sure. My sister was more of a sibling.
Do you think that your brother played more of the parent role because him being a male in Detroit, he felt like he needs to look out for you extra, being his younger brother?
I wouldn't call what he did as looking out. You know what I'm saying? I would call more what he did as getting me in trouble. So no, I wouldn't. I don't think that was the way he was looking at it. He would have a different depiction of what I'm saying right now, but I don't remember him pulling me out a lot of jams. I can tell you that much.
So what made you think that he was more like tried to play like the father role?
Oh, because he would try to get me in trouble. You know what I'm saying? And tell me what to do. And if I don't do this, then I'm going to tell, you know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a lot of, like me and my sister that had situations where, parents out of town. So, like the, in those older bungalows, how the heat registers used to have like these wooden grates over them. I don't know why them things was that big. But they was like manholes in the house in various little, like under the window sill, whatever. And I'll never forget one time my parents was out of town and me and my sister was at the house. And I don't know what happened. I can't remember if it was her or me. One of us fell through that. Foot kicked the pipe and bust the pipe. So it's flooding the basement, bro. And my parents was
Wow.
like on a trip to, I don't know where they went, maybe Niagara Falls or something, and we didn't want to have to call them. And so I think this is one time where my brother hopped in as an ally, but only because me and my sister had art. So what I'm saying is there's been moments where me and my sister have collectively come together where we trying to be siblings and do a sibling thing, like how we gonna figure this out? We in the yellow pages with no money, just a lot of just poor decisions, you know what I'm saying, trying to rectify it. Whereas, yeah, I didn't get that same type of feel from my brother.
Got you. What song would take you back to your childhood the quickest? Like you hear this song, it immediately take you back to your childhood.
Man, that's a really good question. I would definitely say like Life After Death, Biggie album, Hit 'Em Up. Like that was my middle school
What?
era.
So like if right now if Life After Death came on or Hit 'Em Up came on, what would be the first thing you think you would think about as reference to your childhood?
Growing up, middle school grew me up a lot, bro. Like I went to middle school next to the Herman Garden projects, and got exposed to gang banging my 6th grade year. We had metal detectors at the high school. You know what I'm saying? We had cats, you know, 7th grade catching natural life for murder charges. Yeah, middle school grew me up, bro. You know what I'm saying? Everything like was going down in middle school. And I had to figure it out because again, like my parents they didn't have the capacity to really understand. So I had to figure it out. Like I tried out gang banging in 6th grade. Then I'm like, so I'm gonna knock out my man that I'm cool with? That's kind of stupid. That didn't make sense to me, right? Unwarranted violence for people that I knew that I had no problem with them. This is stupid. But I had to figure that out, and started having sex in middle school. Lost my virginity at 12. Like all of the biggest, like middle school group, by the time I went to high school, I was grown. You know what I'm saying? Like everything that happened in middle school, by the time I got to high school, I was grown. Yeah, so when I hear those songs, it take me back to that. It take me back to seeing homegrown weed in the bathroom with Rennie, you know what I'm saying, in 7th grade. It take me back to, smoking like it'd be the equivalent of like Black and Miles, right? But before school and we out back and which I never understood how the teachers didn't say something to us. They had to smell something, I would think. Not looking back on it. Like, you know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff is more prevalent. Like I tried everything, did everything in middle school, bro. So when I hear those songs, it takes me back to to all the things.
Generally when you hear about people being outside, they don't necessarily have a father in a home, maybe not necessarily a stable situation, so they kind of out looking for something. Seems that you had a father in the home, mother in the home, both working. What do you think drew you to being outside?
It was too slow in the crib, man. You know what I'm saying? Like it was too slow. My old dude, I thank God for him because without having at least that balance, I don't know where I would be right now. You know what I mean? But he was a steady Eddie, bro. Like he didn't go nowhere. He didn't have no friends, so he either be at work or at home. He was always at home. And you come in, he watching westerns and Columbo. It just be slow at the crib, man. You know what I'm saying? It just be
I
Tigers
like
game for
Columbo.
3 hours. Like, bro, it's just slow at the house. And so I wanted to be outside, man. It was like, bro, this is because it was such the adverse to what I was facing on a day in and day out basis. So for me, if I'm going to gladiator school in middle school, then I need to be getting some training. You know what I'm saying? To endure that on a day in and day out basis. So I need to be outside getting training to be able to coexist in this environment that I'm dropped off in that's totally foreign from this house that I'm growing up in.
And you think your dad really had no clue of really what he was dropping you off into versus what he's preparing you for at home?
No. I think in his mind that I think he knew that there was some opposing forces out there, but I believe in his mind, as long as he was in the house and kept us in the house, then we would be protected from all of that.
Gotcha. That makes sense. If your high school years had a theme song, what song would that be?
Big Timers, right? Hot Boys, Wayne, Baby, all of them would be like ninth grade through, Master P, Ghetto Dope. So all that was like ninth grade through like 11th. But then after, a few injuries and sports was over with, it was like CNN, Capone, and Noriega for the whole 12th grade year. If y'all was there, it was an error. Bro, like we got, for probably the last 6 months of our senior year, we would get hotel rooms and throw hotel parties every single weekend.
So that was your early entrepreneur endeavors outside of the streets?
So back then, before my wife, I had a girlfriend who was 4 years older than me. And when I was in high school, which now that I'm thinking about, this is, we live in a different era now. I don't even know, we may have to cut that part out of the conversation. I just thought about that like, that's elite. And so was when we was 15, 16 and the guys would be 26, 27, pull up in a Mark 8 with 22s and take our girlfriends and go. So it's just times are so different now, right? Thank God it wasn't no social media back then. But anyway, I used to leverage the fact that she was of age and could get the hotel room. So we ante up, put the cash up, and man, it was a time, you know what I mean? And that's what we did every single weekend. Like, forget senior swing outs, like we just took matters in our own hand. But, people started going to jail. Somebody got lit on fire one time. It's just a lot going on.
Wait 1 minute. You can't just skip over somebody got lit on fire. We need to hear about this.
So here's what happened. So two guys who knew each other pretty well. One went to the school, one didn't. One was from the neighborhood, the other one went to the school. They got into it. And
what school did you go to?
I went to Cass. The old Cass, to specify, right? And they got into it. From what I recall, the guy from the neighborhood got tightened up by the other guy, right? It was some hands thrown. And it didn't sit well with him. Alcohol, drugs involved. We at the hotel having a party. So the guy then decides he was going to go over to the guy's grandparents' house and set their car on fire at 2, 3 in the morning, heavily intoxicated. He pours all the gasoline on the car, not realizing, because he drunk, it's splashing on him. He set the car on fire and set him on fire. He ends up in the hospital. Bro, you just can't make this stuff up, man. Like,
what is something that is fun and unexpected about you that most people don't know?
You know what's interesting, bro? I don't think I really do a lot of things for fun. I like traveling the world. That's fun to me. I like going out on yachts. That's fun to me. I like smoking cigars while traveling the world and going out on yachts. But I can tell you one of my guilty pleasures is,
okay,
for whatever reason, bro, I like grocery shopping and I like cleaning the house. People would never, they would never guess anything domesticated about me, I'm sure, right? But the reason is because it's very few times in life, at this juncture of life, that I could get instant gratification from something that I do. I go to the grocery store, I want something, I buy that cinnamon roll, I eat that thing in the car if I want to on my way home. You know what I'm saying? Like I could get what I want right then and there and start to use it. Well, cleaning the house is very similar. That if I go in and I vacuum the floor, I mop the floor, I polish the granite, like I can see the work that I put in and the immediacy of the payoff, right? Nothing else that I do in life allows me to get that. Now, because it takes 4 hours to clean the house on site, we had to stop doing that. We got cleaners now. But that's something that if I never saw that as a gripe, you know what I mean? And thank God for my parents again. They used to make us, back in the day, furniture was all dual purpose. So, if you had a floor model TV, then that also was like the trophy stand. You know what I'm saying? So you get all your awards from school, they get stacked up there, and then the little globes so every week you gotta dust the furniture. So you gotta take all this stuff off to clean the TV stand, which is really just a TV. You know what I'm saying? So thank God for chores, and I got no problem with cleaning, washing, none of that. Shout out to my mom. She put that in us at a young age.
when you walk into the grocery store, what is 3 items for a fact they know that you put in your cart?
Bananas, some type of nuts, chocolate covered nuts, right? Bridge mix, almond, you know what I mean? You're getting old now. Your candy choices let you know that you're aging. You know what I'm saying? You start getting chocolate covered nuts and Celsius, and sparkling water. So I gave you 4. That's happening every time. And I go every 4 days or so because, we got to keep the fruit fresh. So you can't buy that for too far in advance because it's almost spoiled when you buy it anyway now. They putting out, you know what I'm saying? The prices went up and the quality has went down significantly now.
Yeah, that seems to be an overall life thing. When we was talking about that, I was talking to somebody and they was thinking about getting a house built. And I was like, I've heard that getting a house built back in the day was better, but now they building everything with cheap wood,
Oh yeah,
cheap appliances, all this stuff, to where it's better for you to renovate an old house because everything about the structure and stuff like that is so much better. And just I feel like that about almost everything. If you look at cars back in the day, it took like 3 or 4 people to push them because they were so heavy.
Yeah.
Because they was made with such great material. Now, my son could probably push a car by himself and it's just gonna keep on rolling.
For sure.
They
For sure.
All plastic.
Bro, I had a 2005 Lexus ES330 that I put 330,000 miles on this car on the original motor. Yes, I changed out the alternator a couple of times, whatever. But it's literally change the oil, put gas in, and go, and change the battery every few years. And I ended up giving it to my pastor's daughter, and she's still driving it, bro.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But now you get over 100,000 miles on the car, be like, oh, you did good with that one. So yeah, nothing is built for longevity no more, bro.
What's one thing that you're passionate about outside of work?
Helping people live a better life, right? And the foundation of that being introducing them to Christ in a very organic way, right? Like I ain't out here running around knocking at doors every weekend like Jehovah's Witness trying to give somebody a book to read, but I am consciously aware that I may be the only book that they'll ever read. So the way in which I conduct myself, the way in which I serve people, the way in which I give, all of those things are me just trying to be as much like Christ to let his light shine through me. Because ultimately, right, I talk about being outside and all the rest of it. Christ was the cure for me. There's no way I sit here today without him. I'd be dead or in jail, no doubt about it. You know what I mean? And thank God he had a better plan for my life, and his plan far better than the one I thought I had. And, so I want to expose as many people to that as possible because too many people are settling for counterfeit today. And there is no there.
What would you consider counterfeit?
Yeah, so when we aren't fully living in our purpose, we working dead-end jobs, we shooting moves, we swiping credit cards, we trying to go on vacations, we buying clothes that make us feel better but not be better. We always looking for like something to fill this void of being unfulfilled. And anything outside of Christ will be counterfeit. And so we constantly trying to anesthetize ourselves and distract us from the life that we don't want instead of taking the time to do the work inwardly and making the tough decisions to go and build the life that we do want. So I help people kind of uncover that because I had to. I had, used to drink heavy, just constantly distracting myself. I created this perception of joy and happiness and, but it was fake. And when the buzz wore off, then you had to deal with the realities and even more worse, deal with the realities of the money that you spent that you shouldn't have spent, that if you've been sober, you wouldn't have spent. You know what I'm saying? So it's a compound effect. Every time we settle for counterfeit, it just turned into costing us more in the long term. And we still not doing what we was purposed to do.
You said that you used to drink heavy. Obviously, you talked about throwing parties every weekend and high school and drinking and drugs and stuff like that. How often do you drink now, or kind of where are you at with that?
By the way, statistics are real. When they say that people that start drinking in high school are more prone to be alcoholics. That's 100% true. You know what I'm saying? I can promise you that. So you got to think, if you drinking every weekend in high school, your senior year, then what happens when you actually become an adult or you're in a college context where it's more prevalent and you don't got to sneak and have somebody 4 years older than you to go and buy the stuff? And you know what I mean? So then it just, it normalizes something that's not normal, that you made normal. Yeah, I was a functioning alcoholic. I would go to work, I get it in on the weekends. Very seldom that I drink during the week, but I would, you know. And then it got to a point where in January 2019, I had the worst hangover that I ever had. And I only had like 3-4 drinks. And it didn't make any sense. And I had, it was a Sunday. I had 3 sales calls and about my mentorship program. And then I had a team meeting. And I'll never forget, my head was hurting so bad at this resort. I had to cancel all 3 of them calls, which could have cost me like $120,000 essentially. And then I had to take my team meeting from the bar, the tiki bar at the resort, trying to chase the hangover and get rid of my headache. It was just a vicious cycle. And so I normally would do a cleanse at the start of the year anyway, every year, a 7-day cleanse and like a detox. And while I was on that detox, I just heard a couple different sermons that weren't even about necessarily drinking. One was, but the other one wasn't. It was just about taking authority over your gift, not settling for counterfeit. And man, God spoke to me in such a way that I just finally surrendered to him. And after 18 years of doing it my way, I quit drinking cold turkey. So I ain't had a drink since January 6, 2019, something like that.
So you've had a lot of things that you've accomplished over this time and a lot of things to celebrate. You telling me you haven't had not one drink in that whole time?
Nope. But like, as a matter of fact, 6 months after I stopped drinking, my wife and I, we got the same birthday. And then I got a homeboy in Houston who got the same birthday. So they came down to Miami and we went and got on a yacht for our birthdays. And I bought rosé champagne for them. I bought sparkling pomegranate juice for me, right? Because I still like the taste of that while I'm having my cigar. And somehow the stewardess on the yacht, she got them mixed up and gave me the rosé. As soon as I put it in my mouth, instantly I was like, it's disgusting. Spit it back in the glass, right? Not like overly dramatic. But my boy that was there was like, oh, you didn't already put it in your mouth. Now I said, but I ain't swallow it. And that's over with. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not. It's interesting how people, when they don't understand, and maybe sometimes they do, but they just don't care. It's like if I made a conscious decision to stop drinking and you've been around me all these years and saw some of the results of me doing so, why would you even encourage me in that moment to be like, oh, well, you already done put it in your mouth. Now you might, like, no, I also spit it back in the cup for a reason, you know? That's why you got to be fully convicted about the things that you convicted about. You can't depend on everybody else, even those closest to you, to support whatever kind of movement, change behavior, life changes that you're trying to make. You have to be convicted about that for your own reasons. And I just feel like God is the foundation of being able to be anchored in whatever your decision is.
When you stopped drinking, what was your wife's reaction to you stop drinking?
Oh, she was spooked. Because she had never seen me not drink so I met my wife when I was 17, turning 18 that summer. And so I've been lit since she's like the whole time we didn't ever been together. You know what I mean? Until 35. So for 18 years, she ain't never not known me to drink other than pauses for Lent. I'm going to dry out for 40 days or so, you know, or under the weather, you know what I'm saying? But short of that, like everything recreational, it was up. And so we was sitting at the bar. It was funny because I didn't like make an announcement. This is how you know when you actually change, when you don't have to make an announcement, right? So we just so happened to go to our favorite Mexican restaurant at the time near our house. And we sat at the bar as we normally do, where we would order margaritas and eat our food. And that day I just ordered water with lemon. And she was like, oh, you still doing your cleanse? I said, no, I'm through drinking. She said, what you mean? I said, like, I'm done. I'm through. I don't want to drink no more. So she thought then I was going to turn into drill sergeant and be like, you know what I'm saying, everybody in the house, you know. But I'm like, no, this is my personal conviction between me and God. And, you know, one of my favorite scriptures is 1 Corinthians 13:11, it says, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I reasoned as a child, but when I became a man, I put away childish things. That was my moment of putting away, because that was the catalyst to all other childish things that I used to do. The poor decision making, the inconsistencies. I'm like, if I could go and get rich with this impediment, then how much better could I be if I didn't have it? Right. And so that was me putting drinking in the proverbial toy box and closing it.
Closing. Do you think that was your moment when you really walked into Christ, or do you think Christ has been a part of your life the whole time?
He's been a part of my life the whole time, but I was a lukewarm Christian. I go to church. I always would tithe, I always had a relationship with him, but there's warnings in the scripture about don't quench the Holy Spirit, right? And that's God's spirit within us. When you willfully sin, if you willfully getting drunk, if you willfully, whatever your sin of choice is, right? Like you're quenching the ability for you to feel his fullness and his direction, his guidance, his adjectives are comforter, corrector, teacher, guider, nurturer, right? So when you're quenching his presence in you because of all it is, God is allergic to sin, right? Like he's the opposite of sin. He has to stay away from sin, which is why Jesus had to come die for our sin.
Yep.
So what will happen as a result of that is, yes, I will pray, I will spend time with God, but then I go get loose on the weekend and it's like I'm quenching his spirit. So it's so crazy when I became more aware of this over the years. Like I would literally feel a detachment, right? And I didn't understand why. And it was because like I was living a life that was anti-Christ. And so I wouldn't feel his presence. Now, thank God, because I gave my life to him, he'll never leave me or forsake me. That's his promise, right? My ability to feel and be aware of his presence is predicated on me living my life in right standing and obedience. So the more that you seek him with all your face, the more that he reveals himself to you. But if he know, like any other relationship, if somebody playing you, right? Like, we gonna be cool, we gonna be good, we gonna kick it these 3-4 days, and then I'm gonna go be with my mistress called sin on the weekends. And he's such a gracious, loving God that he accept me back with open arms. But it's still like this yo-yo, and it's like, do you want to go to this next? Because I got another level, but it's going to require another level from you too, though. Like, we can't do this. You know what I mean? It's like if you're in a relationship with anybody else, it's like you all in or you all out. Like, what we doing? We can't keep doing this.
How do you think that your faith shows up in your business now?
Oh, it's everywhere. Like, so my partner David and I, we started this Purpose to Profits coaching program. And while I really loved my real estate program and I got to allow him to use me in the context with those people, in this other setting is different though. Like, so it's called Purpose to Profit. So it's literally that. We're helping people discover, develop, and deploy their gifts into their purpose, because the most successful you ever be in life is using the gifts that God gave you to do life and do them in the life that he designed for you to do. But we get so run down with paying bills and doing what we got to do instead of focusing on what we get to do, which is called our purpose. And so we help people navigate that piece. And then after that, we show them how to put systems and frameworks and offers and marketing and all the business stuff around it to go make a ton of money, right? So I say that to say everything that we're teaching, see, real estate was still more strategy based, right? Because there's just certain fundamentals and foundation to a real estate transaction. If you don't do these few things, it's not going to work. And the Purpose to Profits, you're dealing with human beings and the evolution thereof to help them become the best version of themselves, to go out and bring something to the marketplace to help change other people. It's like the Great Commission is to go out in the world and make more disciples. So we're now in disciple making mode because we're teaching business from biblical principles. So whether people believe in God or not, if you getting taught by us, we teaching you biblical principles. Now, whether or not you go and pursue Christ on your own is up to you. But I think that's a pretty good start. That at least if you using and leveraging our biblical business principles, you probably cracking open the book here and there. And I just trust God enough that if he got a hold of me when I was outside, He can get a hold of anybody. You know what I mean? If they just curious enough.
Seeing you within and out of your real estate business. And one thing that was a common was a lot of people will ask them, like, what made you choose Brian, this, that, and the third? And a lot of the answers came down to how openly you were about talking about Christ within your real estate business, even to the fact, you had lessons where you would bring up Bible verses in real estate. And it's funny, you had one that I heard about 4 times before I actually understood what it meant the fifth time. And it was something to the fact of like a prophet is a prophet is a prophet everywhere besides in his own home, in his own land, amongst his own people. I probably butchered it, but I think you kind of get the point.
That's strong.
I heard you say it like 3 or 4 times before it actually made sense to me the fifth time. And it's funny because you were talking about dealing with stuff within real estate, but that came from a Bible verse, and I understood how it made sense to me in my life as well, even though that's not exactly what you were teaching. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's strong. That's what I mean by I may be the only Bible that folks ever get to read. So what do I do when I have the attention of somebody else? It's the difference between influence and impact. I'm seeking impact over influence. So now that because I'm influential and I have your attention, I have a responsibility to steward over that attention. So what am I going to feed you now that I got your attention? And I want to feed you things that's going to swell your pockets and save your soul.
So do you believe that people find their purpose, or does the purpose find us?
Oh, well, Jeremiah 29:11, God says that he had plans to prosper us and not harm us, plans to give us a hope in the future. So our purpose has been established before he established us. So it is a condition of us finding it, not accepting that whatever I have is whatever I'm supposed to have. Like being willing, I'll say it this way. One of my mentors says this: some of the hardest work that people would never do is think. See, if I think about something outside of my norm, then I'm forced to do something about whatever I discover. Or I'm going to be living in the hell of knowing out of fear, timidity, or apprehension that I didn't go and explore that thing that has been exposed to me. And Mark Twain, I believe, said it best, that a mind stretched beyond its original dimension could never return back to its original shape. So once I've been exposed to something else, I can't unsee what I saw. So what do people do? They stay in their bubble. So they totally miss their purpose. Like to think that God put you here for a specific purpose, gave you gifts to go and pursue that purpose. And that's the thing you'll be most successful at doing, because that's what he designed you to do. And you didn't do that. You show up 80 years later having a conversation with God about how you fumbled your life. That's crazy to me, bro.
I'm back and forth on do we find our purpose, or does the purpose find us type of ordeal? Because I look at certain things where it's like for me, for example, I went into video production, right? And I felt like it was such a circumstance that it happened. It definitely found me, but did it? And the reason why I say that is, for me personally, not going too far into the details, I just filled out for a bunch of colleges. One of them called me back and was like, "What you like to do?" And I just started explaining. And they was like, "We think you like the video program." I told them to send me something. They sent me something. I said, "It looked cool to me." I've been doing video ever since, right? So, but I had no idea that's what I wanted to do. I didn't even know that was a pathway. But at the same time, when you look back on stuff, I'm in almost no pictures for when I was a kid, because I was always the person taking the pictures. I had a little camcorder. I was always videoing stuff, and I loved anime and Dragon Ball Z. I used to tape part of a fight, tape another part of a fight to make 2 people fight each other. But not one part of that I thought about as a career. None of the times, even when she asked me what I like to do and I was explaining, I still didn't think of it as a career. So I was divided on the question of, that was always there. So did I find the purpose, or did it find me? Because if I had not had that conversation with that lady, I have no idea what I'd be doing right now, because video wasn't on my radar at all.
And I get that. Neither was real estate for me, right? However, the whole essence as to how, so there's a scripture, and I'm paraphrasing this one, but it says, it's the heart of a king to search out a matter. So God is saying that his biggest revelations for us are things we have to search out if we want to position ourselves as kings, right? And have a kingdom, which means that we want more. And so to your point, the conundrum of does it find you or do you find it? You find it not because you're looking for it, because you're looking for more. If you wouldn't have been pursuing going to college, or you wasn't pursuing, like, you had to open a door for that to happen. For me, I wanted something legitimate to do for my family outside of being in the streets. So I had to open a door for it. I didn't know a $6,000 refund check in one transaction was going to turn into multi-million-dollar worth of real estate investing over 20. I didn't know that. I didn't know that while I was coaching people in my real estate program, that was preparation for me now coaching coaches on how to build their programs. I didn't know that. I never pursued that. I didn't know that in March of last year when I was in Paris with my wife, and there was a guy, pretty well-to-do influencer that wanted to do business with my marketing company and was reaching out to me for a referral, that when I took the time in Paris, riding in an Uber with my wife, to talk to this guy, to vouch for my vendor, that a year later, that vendor was going to turn partner and he was going to be on this person's platform. And by virtue of that, we about to do one of the biggest challenges we ever done next week. I didn't know that. This business didn't exist in my mind, but it already existed in the kingdom. That's what I mean by pursuing more, you will discover your purpose.
Who do you think had the biggest impact on your mindset?
Hands down, Nakia Muhammad, my guy. Like, he my clearance savant. He been in the background. He never on pictures. He never on posts. But he has been the most influential male. I thank God for him daily in my life over the last 8 years. That's helped me become the businessman I am, the father I am, the husband I am. And even to some degree, tickle my ears more to make me really pursue and take my walk more serious as a believer. Because unlike the church, he would say stuff like, Proverbs 14:23, all hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads to poverty. And he would just do this like subtly as we having conversations about other things in business. And then it started to click, like you. Like, wait a minute, that makes sense. All hard work brings a profit, but mere talk leads to poverty. People that talk a lot be broke a lot. So I'm like, okay, wait a minute. So then he would like just say these other ones, like when I was building my coaching program, he was like, Jesus told Peter, feed my sheep. Like, that's what you're doing, you feed. So then I'm like, wait a minute, this Bible thing, a trip. This ain't just like church and Holy Ghost and jumping around. Like, it's really some stuff in here that'll change your life if you really understand. So then that got me more curious. So even my walk as a believer was strengthened as a result of having him in my life, which, by the way, was a paid relationship, right? It was an introduction from a mutual colleague, and I hired him as my consultant initially. And I got so much more out of the relationship, and then now he a brother, Some of the biggest, most pivotal relationships in my adult life have come through transactions.
I've heard you mention mentors about 4 or 5 times. Do you think mentors are important?
Oh, I mean, if you want to be successful, they are. Warren Buffett said it best. He said, it's good to learn from your mistakes, but it's better to learn from the mistakes of others. So one of the richest men in the world say, right? And it's true. Mentorship is the catalyst to expediting your success. If you look around your circle and you don't see the people that can help you go out and be successful, then you're going to have to pay to find the people that can. That's just the reality of it, bro. I didn't make the rule. I know some people still hung up on the whole, I don't want to pay for relationships. You paying for the ones you got right now. They're costing you every day. They're costing you everything you don't have because they can't help you get to where you want to go.
What do you think most people misunderstand about what it takes to be successful in the real estate industry?
It's less about real estate and more about people. I don't care how good the deal is. If you can't source the right contractors, if you can't find the right project managers, if you can't get really good with title companies, if you can't get really good with realtors, if you don't get really good at managing the business of people, you will not be successful at real estate. There's too many bottlenecks. There's too many technicalities, even looking at like titles and deeds and liens, and there's so many factors that are to come against you in any given transaction, that if you don't have the right infrastructure and relationships with title companies and real estate attorneys, and on the execution aspect, if you think that you're gonna wag your finger at your contractor and bully him around, you got something else coming. Like, you can't win without good ones, and you certainly you got to learn the rhythm of being the steel hand in a velvet glove. You need to be soft to the touch, but you need to be firm in your stance. And so that's a skill that you have to develop. When I had our real estate mastermind, I taught our students the game within the game. You could pick any video out there, and they're gonna tell you 75% of ARV. They're gonna tell you all the traditional stuff, right? That's not the stuff I taught them. I taught them the stuff that I lost $500,000 to figure out. That's the stuff that I taught them. If you don't do those things right, it don't matter how many properties you buy. It don't matter how much money you got. You're gonna lose in this business if 90% of the game is the people, 10% is the X's and O's.
So if somebody was watching this and they want to do what you do, what tips would you give them for somebody brand new to find their first deal?
Get clear about what your goals are. If your goal is to make chunk money, then you need to go flip or wholesale. Buying rentals, just because that's the easiest thing to do for your first one, ain't the right thing to do if that's not your goal. Because you got to understand, if you are buying rental properties, you're going to make $200-300 per door. That's just what it is, right? And it's a accumulation game over time. If you think I'm about to get into this business and I'm going to get rich from buying rentals, you confused. You know what I mean? And yes, some watching this will be like, oh, I make $700 on my. It's like, okay, cool. You're right. That's an anomaly. But what I'm saying is, for the status quo, for your average deal, you'll make $200-300. Well, on the other side of that, if for whatever reason something happened with that property, and you don't have a lot of reserves saved up, and you got a roof leak or you got a furnace that go out, year one you got to put $5,000 into that property. Where the money gonna come from? If you're only making $200-300 a month when they're paying you, we ain't even talking about when it's vacant and the mortgage is still coming. So you got to be, before you start buying rentals, you should be well capitalized. If you aren't well capitalized and you're buying your first rental, then you should house hack, so that you can use the additional, house hacking would be 2 to 4 units. You can use the additional units in rent income to offset your exposure for the cost of you living there, right? So to me, that's a more sure-proof way to insulate yourself from the downfall. Is, if you're not well capitalized, do your first deal as a house hack. Let the subordinate tenants kind of help provide that cushion. You know what I mean? But be very clear about what the goal is. Buying a house ain't the goal. I promise you it's not. That's the start of something that you don't want no parts of. You got to be abundantly clear about what is the goal to figure out what strategy you should use.
Can you walk us through a deal that you almost passed on but turned out to be a great, or vice versa?
So I won't say that I've necessarily had deals that I almost passed on that turned out to be great. I think any deal I passed on was not a good deal, right? I know that may sound kind of wild to people, but I'm just being honest. If it's a good deal, I ain't passing on it. You know what I mean? So I've had deals where I almost didn't get the deal, right? After months and months and months of pursuing it, and then finally getting it, and it was everything that I thought it would be, and then some. I have had the opposing, though, where I thought deals have been better than what they were and didn't turn out as favorable. I still remember one of my first flips. There was this property in Ypsilanti, of which wasn't a very common market to me, nor was flipping a common practice yet, because I started out in the business buying rentals. And my agent at the time, her and I were trying to figure out the after repair value, which is, what is the property going to be worth when we're done with the renovation? Basically, when you're figuring out ARV, there's a lot of parameters you have to stay within, which I won't get into on this conversation. But the bottom line is, one of the major ones is, if you cross a major road, that can change the ARV, because technically you're in a different neighborhood, although you're on the same street. Now, I didn't know all of this, and she clearly didn't either, because we came up with an ARV of like 155 on this particular house. Unfortunately, after going through 4 months of renovation, doing the whole bit, this property wouldn't appraise for no more than like 132, based on what the comps were, the comparable sales in that vicinity, how appraisal look at it. And so we did all of this work to lose $26,000. Homeowner was happy, but it couldn't sell for more. Like if it don't appraise, I mean, unless they willing to go in their pocket and pay you $20,000 over what they saying it's worth, which is not very common, it's an L. So that was certainly one of those situations for sure.
If I took you and I stripped you of all of your resources, that's contacts, money, etc., dropped you in a brand new city with only $500 in your pocket, what would you do to get back into the real estate game?
Oh yeah, that's easy. I would keep the $500 as for my earnest money deposit. I would contact 3 to 4 local agents in that market. I would start to, evaluate what properties were available that fit my criteria for flipping or wholesaling. I would then start submitting offers. I would figure out a way to come up with some money to start an LLC as well, but I wouldn't let that stop me from actually submitting offers. And then once I got the property on the contract, before we closed, I would make sure that I had figured out a way to get the money to pay for an LLC so I could buy it in the LLC. Because if I'm flipping it and I want to use a hard money lender, then I would need a LLC because they only lend to businesses, not people, right? So that would have to be a lever that I pull at some point. But before then, I would be more focused on having that capital so that if and when my offer get accepted, I got the money for the earnest money deposit. Okay. Then once I get the deal locked in, I would go on the internet, drop it in various Facebook groups looking for private lenders, and then I would bring in a private investor to cover what we call our gap. So the difference between what the lender is giving us and what we need to close the deal, I would have a private investor come in and cover the gap, and then I would do the deal with no money out of pocket.
Okay, let's go the opposite route.
Okay.
If you was given an unlimited budget to create your own real estate show, what would be the name of the show and what would be the concept?
The name of the show would be It's Not That Easy. The concept would be to go around and show the real of what's been going on in the market and not just HGTV skipping Diane. What's their name? Jack and you know what I'm talking about.
The twins.
Yeah. We're not even just the twin, but it's pick one, right? There's been so many of them now. Yeah, that's what I would do. It's not that easy. We will go around and really look at the nitty gritty of projects.
If you got a billboard in downtown Detroit, but it's not an ad, it's just your message to the city, what does it say?
Think bigger.
Why think bigger?
Because a lot of the time in Detroit, we get so silo-oriented that we think that Detroit is it, and it's not. I'm grateful to come from Detroit, but I'm grateful not to live there and have touched different corners of this world as well, right? It's coming from Detroit give you a strong foundation. Staying in Detroit becomes a prison.
I like that. What are you excited about that you're working on now?
As I mentioned earlier, our Purpose to Profits coaching program, helping people really find who they are, exercise their gifts in such a way to help other people and make a ton of money. One of our students, Alex, he came in the program less than 30 days. He made $105,000 in a day, right, from using our framework. And not just that, though, but I talked about that part. He would talk about the man of God that he's becoming as a result of being around and seeing how we maneuver in business using biblical principles, And to be honest, that's the part that drives me more as well. But I just know that people always look at measure success, so I have to put money out there to let them know what's possible. Because, unfortunately, people just don't find value in evolution, I just want to be better today. It's like, no, I want to be better if that results in something, right? So that's why I'm being clear about showing the possibilities of how we've gone from having 6-figure months to making 6 figures in a day, like consistently. It's crazy. But you got to become a different type of person to do it legally anyway.
Where can people find you online or follow what you're working on if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, Brian Adamson Official, all platforms. And, Purpose is exactly how the word is. The number 2, profitschallenge.com. Purpose2profitschallenge.com.
Perfect. And then the last question, we're going to get out of here. If your daughter was watching this interview 10 years later, what do you think that she hoped to understand about you?
That if you trust God, you can become whatever you desire to in life.
Perfect. I think that's a perfect note to end on. I appreciate you spending this time with us today at Faces of Real Estate. It's been a pleasure. You know, I've been around you for several years, but to get to sit down and interview you and pick your brain and let some of the people hear some of the stories I've heard, I think it's just amazing. So I appreciate you and your time.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you, bro.